In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Welcome to week 3 of the summer sermons, in which we're taking our leisurely going through the story of the patriarchs. And today we continue the story of Jacob, but it's through the story of his son Joseph. It's an interesting question, really. Is the story of Joseph primarily about Joseph, or is it actually about his father Jacob? And it's a very long-winded way of finishing off the story that we've been dealing with Jacob for the last couple of weeks. So Jacob has been transformed into this very, very senior figure, and what happens now is the writer has to get Jacob into Egypt. And the story of how he gets there, of course, is through his son Joseph, who is the son of Rachel, the preferred wife. And it's one of these very human stories. There's a reason why Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice had such a hit musical with this story, is because it's a really good story and it connects with all of us, because it's about families, it's about jealousy, it's about all those human things that are so familiar to all of us. And so the story starts today, and next week we'll see the conclusion of the story. But actually what you really need to do is go and read all of those chapters together, because we're only able to deal with some snippets on a Sunday. So the key thing for me about the passage that we heard today is the way in which Joseph's brothers do not know what's happened to him. So there's a bit of a mix-up in the text, if you read it very carefully, between the Ishmaelites and the Midianites. But I think the intention of the story is that the brothers put Joseph in a pit in order to initially kill him, but then they change their mind, and while they're changing their minds, somebody else comes along and removes Joseph from the pit. So when they go back to get him, they genuinely don't know where he is, and they genuinely think that he is dead. And so this is actually a difference from the Andrew Lloyd Webber, Tim Rice take, in which they make it out that the brothers know that he's been sold into Egypt. Now I think that's quite important, because next week, when we get to the point where Joseph reveals himself to his brothers, they are genuinely shocked that their brother is actually still alive. But go to the beginning of the story and you get this point where they say they could not say a good word to him, because he's a bit of a snob, and he's taken a bad report to their father. And you'll notice the children of the concubines. So chances are, as the children of Bilhah and Zilpah, they are second level sons. They're less likely to inherit the major portion of Jacob's property. So there's real sort of tangible human jealousy here, for very good reasons. There's sibling rivalry, effectively. But the fact that they couldn't talk to each other is what makes it so much worse. And in any family, there is that temptation not to be able to communicate. And once communications break down within a family, then it just goes from bad to worse. I prepare people for marriage, and one of the things I always say in marriage preparation is that communication is the key to being able to support and feed one another going forwards. Well, it's the same with marriages, brothers and sisters, friends, whatever it is. All of these community things have to be worked at through communication. And it needs to be respectful, and it needs to be nuanced, and it needs to be reasonable. Joseph was actually being very reasonable. His mistake was perhaps to be a bit naive about how other people feel. And so he was going to learn the hard way that sometimes people's feelings need to be taken into consideration more than perhaps he did. So what does this say about us as Christians? Because at the end of the day, this is a wonderful story about the people who founded the Israelite nation, and we are now a long way on from that. There's a lot more people in the world, as I said a few weeks ago, and we have this sense of a very alien culture where people's personal interactions mattered a lot more than they do now. And maybe during lockdown, when we've had to be a lot more local, maybe we are rediscovering that sense of the value of the people with whom we share our lives. And I wonder if we are starting to rediscover a different way of being community. And it's a way of being community that is much more sensitive to the humanity of the people with whom we have to do. Go back to the Joseph story, and you've got the Ishmaelites or the Midianites or whoever it is, and they stand for people that they don't know. Now, if you go back further in Genesis, you'll realise that they are actually kindred with the Midianites and the Ishmaelites as well. But they're still people that Joseph doesn't know, people that Jacob doesn't know, the people who transport Joseph down to Egypt, where he becomes this Hebrew. I want to say a little bit about the word Hebrew, because there's an ancient text which refers to the Habiru, and it seems to be some sort of economic class, and the way in which the Hebrews were used in Egypt as slaves, and we'll come to that in a few weeks' time with Moses, seems to be something to do with this idea of the Hebrews as being an underclass, if you like. And so I think it's really significant that the people of Israel get their identity from being people who are at the bottom of the pile and are oppressed. Again, we'll come back to more of that when we get to Exodus. As Christians, of course, we can identify with that, because for us, we worship this person who is the crucified Messiah. Now, Peter, as we've already heard, struggled to come to terms with the idea of Jesus as going to suffer. And today in the gospel, we hear more about Peter's lack of faith, or at least having just enough faith to cling on. He wants to get out of the boat. He wants to walk on the sea with Jesus. He wants to have the faith, but it's all so too much, the storms and the sea and everything. And yet he's still got enough faith to be grasped by Jesus. I wonder whether in our modern world the mass of humanity, and it is huge now, can be symbolised by the stormy seas. It's an old idea, the idea that the peoples are the seas. And I wonder whether we can identify with Peter as being slightly in awe of just how many people there are around us, and that we need Jesus to grasp our hand, not so that we can trample on people, but so that we can stay afloat, so that we can stay on top of the chaos. It's easy to fall into the trap of seeing other people as dangerous and chaotic. The Egyptians looked at the Hebrews and saw that. I wonder whether the sons of Jacob looked at the Ishmaelites and the Midianites and thought, dangerous people. But if we can focus on the one who unites our humanity, who saves our humanity through his humility, through his kindness, through his self-giving love, that gives us something to guide us through the dark seas and the stormy clouds. So there we have it. Joseph has been sold into slavery. We too sometimes feel like we are slaves to the elemental spirits of the universe. But Jesus is there. He can walk on water. He can calm the storm. He can hold us by the hand. He can be with us in the prison. So whether we're Joseph or his brothers or whoever we are, far or near, we can look to Jesus and have him hold our hand so that we can live well and go well. Amen.